Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of PostPhD our new podcast. And this is a very, very special episode. Hence, I invited a very, very special person, Angela Breeze, who is not only my co-founder, but also business partner in Almami and friend. And today, we kick off this new podcast by talking about our individual stories, but also about the story of Almami. Welcome, Angela Breeze.
I'm so excited for this, Elena. We've been waiting so long to kick this off. So I'm very excited about this one.
Yeah, me too, Angela. I feel like it's time that we sit down together and do this, especially because so many people keep asking me, how did you meet Angela? How did Almami come to life? And I think this is an opportunity for us to talk about all these things. And I'm really, really excited. And I would actually like to just dive straight in and give the listeners a little bit of an understanding. What are our backgrounds and how did we come to meet? So do you want to start, Angela, and just tell us a little bit, like, who are you?
Yeah. So I'm gonna age myself here. I've been in industry for nearly 25 years. My first job was actually working at a business called Managing Your Business, which was basically outsourced operations for different businesses. And so I've been doing this for a very, very long time, but my background is really in building high performing teams. And you do that through creating a sense of belonging, strong values, having the right processes to enable people, having the right management structures, blah, 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 blah. Lots of boring stuff. I could geek out on it forever. But that's really my background, is like, how do you create these high performing organizations? And a few years back, my oldest daughter had gone off to college and really struggled with it, realized college wasn't really the path for her. And then my youngest daughter, we decided to try something a little different because clearly things were different than when I went away to college and I took the college path. So I didn't know like how to do anything other than that track. And my youngest daughter started showing signs that college wasn't going to really be for her either. And what I know from my background in operations is that when you put somebody in an environment that's not well matched, they tend not to do well. It's kind of like this no duh thing, but we still try and force fit people anyways, because that's what we do. But it started to become very clear that she wasn't going to go the college route and she wasn't going to be happy if we forced her down that path. But when we started looking for resources, there weren't a lot of resources out there that really helped us understand, okay, if she's not going to college, what does she do? What does she do? And as I started to research it, like a lot of kids were struggling with this. There's just nothing out there. It's like you either go to college or you're on your own, figure it out. And we came across a service that we paid for, and it was several $1,000s. And then it was really helpful in terms of getting our heads wrapped around, okay, how do we navigate different alternatives? But it seemed really unfair to me that, we could access that, but that wasn't something that's broadly accessible, especially in the internet age when information is at our fingertips. It just wasn't there. And the resources that are out there are either kind of misguided or really expensive, or they don't really take into account the things that we talk about in hiring rooms. And so I started kind of looking into this problem, and I was doing a lot of networking at the time. And I came across, our mutual friend, Jeremy Barr, during that networking. And he said, you're trying to solve this problem. You should probably meet Elena. Because she has similar interests, and I think you guys would really hit it off. So that's where I met you, and you had this like really rich and vibrant story of your own about your journey on the PhD track, and I'll kind of let you talk about that, and then we can kind of go down how we brought the two together, because there's this richness in the interaction that came from both of our backgrounds.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Angela. And the funny thing is, whenever I think about Whenever I talk about you with other people and they ask me about my co-founder, I always introduce and start saying, like, meeting Angela is or was better or is better than winning the lottery. And it's really because we're so aligned in mission and vision, but at the same time so complementary in skills, and we will come to that part. If, like, listening to what problem you or what you saw in the world and what you wanted to solve for, someone coming from high school. My story started with me doing a PhD here at Karolinska Institute in the field of immunology, so in medicine. And I realized halfway through, PhD wasn't, or academia wasn't really for me long term, because I felt very isolated in the lab. And, I realized that when I sat and we had, lunch or we had some coffee together, that this is the time that I enjoyed the most almost of my day. And it was a sign for me that I really like to be surrounded by people and have the human connection and interaction in something that I do. And so I really went on my own little journey. I didn't really know what I could do if I didn't want to stay in academia. So a little bit selfishly, I joined an organization which was called PhD Careers Beyond Academia, where we really organized sessions for other PhD students and postdocs at Karolinska Institute to highlight PhDs that have made the transition successfully. And it's really so interesting because it broadened my mind and the way I looked at what my opportunities after a PhD are. Because a lot of us, they think, cool, I'm a biologist, I can pipette, I can probably work in any other lab in the world. But what these sessions did to me, they really opened up my mind in terms of, wow, we had Zach who became a management consultant at McKinsey. We had another PhD and he became a research equity analyst in a bank. We had editors, we had marketing managers, and I realized the world is your oyster after a PhD. And I saw at the same time that a lot of PhDs didn't know about this. So they felt, when they thought about moving out of academia, they felt like sometimes, what do I have to give to the world? Do I have any skills that are valuable in industry? And what can I do within this small subject matter expertise where I'm an expert in? And these sessions really opened up their mind just like they did mine. And I realized it's a place where I can make like real impact. I think I'm a very impact driven person. So once you understand a little bit what drives you too, you get a little bit of a sense of where you might want to go in the future. I really enjoy helping others. And like, it was one of the most fulfilling things I think I've ever done. I will never forget when I walked out of these sessions. It was just deeply fulfilling. And I was like, I feel like there is something that I could potentially help solving. So I went on my own spree, and I got to meet that connection that actually connected us through LinkedIn too. Yeah, and this is how we two met, Angela, right? And from there on, it only went upwards with our both kind of like
Yeah.
dreams that we have.
And I think when we first met and I started understanding, because I come out of data and technology industries, so throughout my career I worked with a lot of PhDs. And some of them were really, really phenomenal to work with. These like people who were these power players on their teams, because not only did they have like this high intellect and this high level of intelligence, this ability to learn complex things really quickly, but they also balanced that with this personability and this authenticity and this desire to help. There were also some not so great ones mixed in there occasionally, but the ones who did really well were these ones who could balance both the human side and kind of the science and learning side. And so when we met and you were talking to me about this PhD problem, what was really interesting for me is it was like, this is the same problem at a different level of academia. And as I kind of started to talk to more people, what I realized was that if you think about education, education is like a superhighway. It's a highway and there are all these off ramps. And the off ramps, it's like a black hole. Nobody is giving people this great information about how to do this effectively. And like I said, the information that's out there, it's really generic. It's and kind of having been in hiring rooms and looking at some of the people out there who are saying, here's how you trick the ATS. And I'm like, that's not what the ATS does. Like, here's how you get around the ATS. Here's how you know, make sure it's not AI reviewing your resume. AI doesn't do that. Humans do that. Or hearing people talk about things like you have to have a portfolio to get hired in industry, which drives me wild because that's only true in certain positions. And it's a subset, so hearing those things and going, this is wrong. Let's get the right information in these folks' hands because, if we can solve it at the PhD level, we can solve it at the other levels as well. And so, that was around the point, Elena, I think, where, we were introduced and we were introduced through, hey, let's do these weekly sessions and we'll use it to start getting our message out and all of this stuff. And I'll never forget the first session where we had this big lead up to doing this free seminar, and we had one person show up, which in comparison to now is pretty. We haven't probably celebrated this enough, Elena. We had one person show up at our first one. Today we have packed rooms. 140 people showed up to one of our events yesterday or earlier this week. So it's been a journey, but I think, for me, it was so amazing as we started to do that. And we go into those sessions and just have these conversations where it's like, hey, we're just dropping truth bombs here. Here's how it really works. Here's what you do. And then having people start to come back to us and go, I got that job because of you. That thing that you told me was gold because I was able to get a job as a result of it. And that's where, for me, I really started to realize that we had something special and that the dynamic between you and I, with our shared values and kind of our work styles. And to your point, we have completely complementary skill sets. Like, you're the social butterfly and I'm like, I enjoy a good one-on-one conversation, but I am so nerve-wracked getting in front of groups and things, doing that portion. But really being in this environment where you see real and true impact and impacting people's lives in a positive way and going, you know what? You don't have to feel hopeless. You don't have to feel overwhelmed. You don't have to feel frustrated or disenfranchised. You're just operating off the wrong information. So let's give you the right information and see what happens. And when we do, it's like this really powerful thing because people feel this sense of self-efficacy. They feel less hopeless. They go, it wasn't me. It was just, I was doing this the wrong way, So it's really, that's kind of, those first sessions for me were just very kind of inspiring to say, this is a real and true problem. And this is a problem that we can solve. So how do we solve it for more people?
Exactly. I think that's a very, very important point. How do we solve it for more people? Because what we saw is that what we do has actually a real world impact. People started to get interviews when they implemented what we recommended in these sessions. People started to landing jobs. I will never forget our poster child, I guess, Raquel, forever and ever. And it was interesting too, because we realized one thing. They all seem to deal with similar challenges. And we got the same questions over and over. So at the end, it was just a matter of how can we package the information Angela has and I have and make it available to as many PhDs and postdocs or even mid-career academics who struggle with the same challenges as you said. For example, one of the biggest challenges really how to communicate your value. And it all starts with understanding you got value and you got skills that are valuable to industry, but it all starts with the awareness that you have them. And then the next step is how do I take these skills where I know the terminology and what we call them in academia and now translate them into a language that industry can understand them and hence sees the value of my skills for these different roles or a particular role I'm applying. And I think this is, at the end of the day, you have a highly educated human being who has a tons of skills and they cannot find a job simply because they don't know how to communicate the value. And there is some sort of barrier that we can actually break And I think that's why we're here together, and I think that's what we both burn for.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you hit the nail on the head where there's this like this translation gap. And when you look at academia, academia actually has its own product, and people often don't think of it that way. But the product that academia is selling is knowledge. And that's how they get funded, by selling knowledge. And so, and then that comes back around and it feeds their mission, which then allows them to build and sell more knowledge, and it creates this virtual cycle. And I think a lot of times, industry gets pegged as like this kind of big bad who's only about profit, but a lot of companies are very mission based. They have a mission, and you sell products because they help somebody, right? It's helping somebody solve some type of problem. And so if you think about it from that perspective, that, industry isn't so different. It's, we solve a problem to help people so that we grow our customer base and get profit. And then rather than having like grant funding or philanthropic funding or anything like that, we fund that mission through profit. And so, in that respect, it's these two kind of virtuous cycles that are very, very similar. But, because you're selling knowledge in industry, a lot of the outputs are around publication and prestige and visibility and all of those things that and it's very individual. Like it's very, you're sitting off in your lab doing things individually. In industry, we place emphasis on different things because those are the things that help us grow. And so the publications aren't as important because our customers aren't reading trade journals. Like that's not as important. And so a lot of times, when I've reviewed, thousands of resumes throughout my career, but one of the things that PhDs really, really struggle with is because there's so much importance placed on the publications and the presentations and the conferences and that kind of like being out in front to spread the university's prestige. That's not super important to us in industry. In industry, what drives our business and what helps grow our customer base is our output. And so, and our output is different. It's our product output, So it's not necessarily spreading knowledge. Our product is not spreading knowledge. So we care about things like how did you apply your skills in a way that created some value or benefit to an organization? That's what we care about. But that's a hard shift, right? From, and I've had lots of people even come to me and say, my PI says that in order to get a job, I have to be published. And I'm like, couldn't be further from the truth. When we see a publication list on a resume, we don't read it. And all it does is create a bias that you're too academic. So, and that's code for you don't have applied skills. Your knowledge is theoretical. So when all you talk about is how you've written, all we think about is, okay, you're great in theory. Can you practice? And folks assume that we go through and read, and if we read, we would see that, yes, you have the practical skill. If we read those publications, we would see that you have the practical skills. But we don't have time to go and read a list of publications. So it's things like that where, there's just this misunderstanding and there's this different emphasis on what's important that really trips people up. And I think, and it becomes discouraging because when you've been applying for 6 months, a year, and you've applied for thousands of jobs and you've been told how smart and intelligent and capable you are, and then you don't get a single interview after a year of applying to jobs, that's completely disheartening. What I find, it's these small things that are wrong, but oftentimes I had somebody in my inbox about a month ago who he said, I feel like it's scientists see, scientists do, because the people out there helping are just other PhDs. Part of, I think, and we've talked about this, Elena, what I observed is there's a lot of people out there who are trying to help and they're completely and totally well intentioned in what they're doing. And I think it's phenomenal that there are this many helpers out there. And at the same time, a lot of the folks that are helping don't have hiring experience. So they haven't ever been involved in a hiring conversation. They haven't ever seen the comments that we put in the system that is the feedback on a candidate. They haven't engaged with the recruiter from kind of this side of the fence, and so some of that feedback lacks nuance. So people go out and they try things and they're like, well, I got told to put together this big portfolio and I'm still not getting hired. Why am I not getting hired? Well, because portfolios are only relevant in design or, writing roles. It's not relevant in the majority of roles. So, I think it's when you start seeing like, hey, you're just kind of playing by the wrong rule book. Let me teach you what the rule book is. The problem is simple, or the solution is simple, I should say.
Nice. I love it. And as we identified all of these struggles, but also like, what your and my knowledge combined could add to that audience. I think this is really how Almami was born, when we realized we're a strong team and we can actually help these PhDs and postdocs to actually land jobs without going through frustrating 6 months of not getting a single interview. And this really brings me, Angela. So how would you say, or what would you say is the mission and vision of Almami? What is it that we want to bring into the world?
Yeah. So I think ultimately her mission is to help PhDs get jobs. I mean, it's as simple as that. And from a vision perspective, we want to help lots of people get jobs. But I think the key word there is help, right? Because I think when you think about the importance of somebody having a job, that's like life or death stuff, right? That is, I'm putting food on the table, I'm paying my bills, I'm putting a roof over my head. Those are, basic needs things. And, when you help somebody create stability, when you help somebody in this life-changing way, I think what you do is you create this really beautiful after effect of that person now wants to help other people because they went through this struggle. They understand how hard it is and they were able to get help. And so I think, when we talk about we want to help, 2 million PhDs land jobs, I think that ultimately what we're doing is we're making the world better because we're creating an army of 2 million helpers who want to help other people. And so, we're this small company who can have this enormous impact, particularly with, all of the things going on in the world right now where people are so disconnected, they're so disenfranchised, they're frustrated, you've got this thread of corporate greed going on in the world that, can make it very difficult to want to be part of, that corporate world. But when you create more opportunity for help to happen, you can change things. And so I think that's ultimately the mission of Amami is we want to change the world, and we want to change the world by changing people's lives, because when you do that, you make it better for everybody.
Absolutely love this, the ripple effect that we try to kind of leverage here at Almami by helping others, and then hopefully they become helpers for others too. And Angela, I have a very last question for you, because I'm asked a lot, and a lot of people ask me, the name of our company is alma.me, or as we call it, Almami. Where does the name originate from? Why Almami, and what does it mean?
Yeah. I love this question when people ask me this question, because the way that you create like a more optimistic world is, through this helping aspect. And Alma, if you think about words like alma mater means nourishing mother, right? And so Alma me is kind of a play on that, where it's about nourishing. So means nourish or nurture. In some cultures, it means soul, so it's this core thing within us. But ultimately, I think what Alma Me is about nourishing people and helping people nourish themselves, right? It's not about, hey, we're going to go and we're going to do everything for you, but we're going to empower you so that you can see, Elena, you talked earlier about like understanding your value, right? So when you empower somebody, when you nourish them so that they can see their value, like then they become self-effective in nourishing themselves. And this idea of self-care and all of that is all wound up in that idea of kind of nourish your soul, nourish your body, nourish your mind, right? And so that's really what Alma Me is about. It's about nourishing people and nurturing them so that they can, achieve the big things and achieve their dreams, and you know and not worry that they don't have intrinsic inherent value. So it's about building people up so that they can fly off in the world and do amazing things.
I love this. It's all about empowering people, instill some confidence in some cases, and just empowering them to find their own way. Empowering can come in very many different ways. We always say we're not a resume or CV writing service, because we want people to be able to do these things on their own. And I think that's very, very important. Yeah. Thank you so much, Angela. We're coming to the end of this very first episode. I could sit here and talk about Alma Me forever and ever. I'm not sure people want to hear that, but maybe we make another episode in the future, elaborating a little bit more on different topics within Alma Me. Thank you so much, Angela. It was a pleasure. I'm glad we finally managed to record this episode. Yeah, from now on, I can refer people to listen in when they ask me, how did you two meet, actually?
I love it. Finally, it's a long time in the making. So yes, thank you for having me. And it's been a pleasure. And I think that, thank you for being an amazing human, an amazing partner, and being with me on this really freaking crazy, chaotic, phenomenal journey of, really changing the world.
Thank you, Angela. Likewise, and of course, I knew you were the one, and I know I made a post about it when you told me you love to fill in Excel sheets, because it's so not me, but it's basically everything I needed in someone, like this structure in business, but also the kind human being you are. I think that's just we're a match made in heaven. That's why I always say it's better than winning the lottery, because I think winning the lottery, you get a lot of money, you don't know what to do with it, but we're building something together that is really, really meaningful. And I also know finding the right co-founder can be a real, real struggle. And I don't know how it happened, but I always say when you're on the right track, the universe supports you. So I guess the universe did help a little bit here that we two meet, because we haven't actually mentioned it. I'm in Stockholm, you're in Colorado in the US. So we're not only in different countries, we're literally like an ocean apart. Yeah, across the pond, basically. Yeah, it's challenging in many ways, but it's extremely rewarding to build Alma Me, really. And I couldn't think of a better person to do it with than you, Angela.
Wouldn't do it with anybody else. So
Exactly.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Hopefully it was interesting for them. But yeah, thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Angela.